Thank Okay, so please let us pray. Our Heavenly Father, Creator God, thank you for blessing us with the beauty and wonder of your creation. It sustains us, it restores our souls, and it connects us to you. Guide us to be the stewards you created us to be. Help us share your bounty with others and use it as you want us to use it. Amen. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Jonathan Brake.
Actually, I'm going to pop in here
Oh, that's
real
right,
quick.
you are.
That's all right. This is our first event, so we may have a little bobble here and there, and we ask that you bear with us. So I have the honor of introducing our speaker today. So some of you may already know Reverend Jonathan Brake. He's an ordained elder here in the Western North Carolina Conference. And Dawn is going to pop his official biography into the chat so that you can read about him. But just informally, Jonathan, it was actually the creator of our creation care ministry team here in the Western North Carolina Conference. He got things started, and that was part of his Earth Keepers project. So Jonathan is an ordained, or I want to say commissioned, United Methodist Earth Keeper, and currently he is now in charge of the Earth Keepers program in his current job. So you can read the rest of his bio, and I will turn things over to Jonathan.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Dawn, for helping us get started today. We are excited that you are here for this first of our Lunch and Learn sessions. And over the next few months, we're going to be sharing with you about creation care and justice, really from General Conference and how things are going with General Conference legislation, where they came from, what they are about. And so, General Conference, well, what I'm going to do today is give you an overview, kind of where the legislation came from and what we're going to do with that, unpacking it. And for those of you who know, General Conference is every 4 years in the United Methodist Church. The way I remember it is on leap years, or if you forget what leap years are, it's always on the same year as a presidential election. So when things get geared up in politics, our General Conference is about to meet. Of course, the 2020 General Conference did not happen because it was postponed due to the worldwide COVID pandemic. And so we went 8 years since the last full General Conference. There was that special called conference in 2019, but 8 years in full legislation on topics such as we're going to be covering here with you. Now, if you paid much attention to the General Conference that was in Charlotte back in April, what you heard most about were the three R's. It was the three big issues of remove human sexuality, the restrictive language in the Book of Discipline that was removed was the first one. Regionalization was the second one, which the way we have been set up as United Methodists is that in the USA, it's kind of a US centered perspective. We're designed very much like the US government with a legislative, judicial, and executive branches of our church. And outside the United States, instead of annual conference, we had central conferences. And these central conferences were not quite on level with all others. And so regionalization was to bring everyone equitably at the same level. So that was another big issue that came out of General Conference this year. And then the third R, you got remove sexuality language, regionalization, and the third item was to revise the social principles. These are the three things that you probably heard the most about in news items, either online or on network news, was those three items. But there's a lot more that happened than just removing human sexuality language, regionalization, and revising the social principles. So during this Lunch and Learn series, what we want to do with you is your creation care ministry team for the conference is to unpack the other great news that came out of General Conference and that's the legislation around creation, care, and justice. Now, what that entails are 19 different pieces of legislation that had something to do with creation. That's a lot. And it's exciting to see this happening for us as United Methodists. So, General Conference 2024 turned out to be a real positive move forward on creation, care, and justice. And um, because of the three big R's, this legislation didn't get as much publicity. We want to make sure you're aware of what the legislation was and how different pieces of this are going to directly impact you as a United Methodist person and also your local church or your creation care team or the efforts you're trying to do in your local congregation. Now, at least one of these pieces of legislation is directly related to your own leadership here in Western North Carolina. Kim Richmond was the main author on one of our pieces of legislation that passed at annual conference in 2023 and then went on to be passed at general conference in 2024. We will get to that one throughout our series over these next few weeks. But we're going to present these different pieces of legislation. We're going to talk about how you might implement what has been stated, what is not just a great idea, but has been approved by the highest levels of our United Methodist denomination. And so we want to tell you about these additions and these changes. But before we get to that, what I want to do today is give you a quick overview of what the where this legislation can be found and how you can access it. So we have two books that are sort of our guiding, directing books as United Methodist peoples. There's the Book of Discipline, which you've probably heard of. There is also the Book of Resolutions. And so we're doing this series because oftentimes people are most church members are not even aware that these books exist. And if you know they exist, you don't really know what's in the book. So if you are aware that these books exist, the question is, what do we do about that? How much of what is officially in the Book of Discipline and the Book of Resolutions actually gets implemented? And so I want to talk about some of that. The Book of Discipline of the United Methodist Church, if you've been at any level of leadership in the local church, you've most likely heard of the Book of Discipline. You might have even read some of it because it has information there that pertains to just about every committee that we have in the United Methodist local church sessions. So here's a description from the Cokesbury website. You can actually go there and pre-order this new version. It should be out in January. But their description says, experience the culmination of 2 centuries of unity and progress within the United Methodist Church. The Book of Discipline, our guiding document, serves as a testament to our past and a roadmap for our future. This essential book outlines the law, doctrine, administration, organizational work, and procedures of the United Methodist Church. Each General Conference amends the Book of Discipline, and the actions of the General Conference are reflected in the quadrennial revision. Quadrennial simply means every 4 years. So every 4 years we revise the Book of Discipline unless there's a worldwide COVID pandemic, then it takes a little longer. But this book is divided into 6 informative sections. And here they are, if you're interested. The Constitution is the part that lays out who we are as a church. I'm hearing some noise coming through. I think someone is unmuted, and I don't want it to be a distraction. So if you're unmuted, please mute yourself. So the Book of Discipline has this Constitution. This is the part that things like the regionalization falls into. So if you're following annual conference this coming year, you'll hear where, just like the U.S. government changing the Constitution, it has to go out to all of the annual conferences in the U.S. and the central conferences around the world to be approved at a certain level so it can then become adopted as our denomination. So the Constitution is the part that can't be easily changed. It's set and it's what we go by. There's a little section called the General Book of Discipleship of Discipline, and then you have the doctrinal standards and our theological task, the ministry of all Christians, which speaks in broad strokes about how we are all in ministry in different ways in the life of the church. And then there's a section called the social principles. The social principles date back to the 1960s when the revised social principles this year were passed, and they're even more clearly rooted in scripture and history, and they have much more of an equality system worldwide. So all of the United Methodists around the world were a part of revising our social principles with a global view because we are a global church. And so and then finally, you have the part that if you're on a committee in a church, you're probably aware of the organization and administration section of the Book of Discipline that talks about what trustees are to do and how church councils and staff parish relations committees, things like that work. And so, in this Book of Discipline, there is a paragraph 105, which is in that section called Our Doctrinal Standards and Theological Tasks. And it's in there that really what we're saying is important to us in our theological outworking of our faith is rooted in the language that we find there, the language about creation. And so it raises creation and our care and understanding of creation to a much higher level as United Methodists and puts it as a priority. It's a part of our doctrinal task as United Methodist Christians in the world we inhabit. And so it says in that section, the present challenge to theology in the church is this. It's a whole section called about our present challenge to theology in the church. It says, in addition to historic tensions and conflicts that still require resolution, new issues continually arise that summon us to fresh theological inquiry. Daily, we are presented with an array of concerns that challenge our proclamation of God's reign over all of human existence. And then our theological task, a few sentences later, says very clearly, misuse of natural resources and disregard for the fragile balances in our environment contradict our calling to care for God's creation. And so right there in the Book of Discipline, in the foundational statements about our theology and how we live out our Christian life, is this high level of appreciation of the environment and caring for God's creation. So that brings me to our Book of Resolutions. The Book of Resolutions is described in the Cokesbury website like this. It says, United Methodists take a stand, make a difference, and shape a better future. Discover the power of an active faith as United Methodists in your daily life with the Book of Resolutions. This new edition offers models for making a real impact on the world around us as decided at the latest General Conference. And in this book, you can explore over 200 carefully curated positions on a wide range of subjects, conveniently organized into 7 sections. And these 7 sections happen to coincide with the sections of the social principles. So what we have here are the sections of the social principles, also the way the Book of Resolutions is broken down. The first one is the one we're going to focus on in our Lunch and Learn series on the natural world. And we're going to talk about how do the items that were approved affect you and me in our local church. And then how do we understand the Book of Resolutions itself? So as a lot of us, I mean, I've been through seminary, I was aware of the Book of Resolutions, but I was never really sure exactly how to utilize it and how to make sense of it. So here's in a nutshell how to understand it. It's really an extension of the social principles. So we've got the social principles in the Book of Discipline, and if we were to take those and say, what do we do with them? We have the Book of Resolutions to help us figure out what to do with them, how to apply those social principles, whether it's in your local church, in your family, your personal life, into your community. Those are the things that we're looking at. And yet, no church or individual is actually bound by the social principles. And this is where it gets a little confusing because some people will say, I really love the social principles. We should all be following them to the letter. And others say, well, those are just ideas and their guidelines, but we don't have to follow them. Every church I've served throughout 20 plus years of ministry, I have had in my congregation people from across the theological perspective, across a political perspective, and so not everyone looks at everything with the same lens, the same understanding. And so the Book of Resolutions really stands here as an opportunity for us to set out kind of the beginning of how we understand living out our faith in these areas. And so something else to know about the Book of Resolutions is that every resolution in there is set to sunset, to go away in 8 years, unless it's readopted, which means the exact same language as this is approved for another 8 years, or it's what we call reaffirmed, which there are some revisions in there, and then those will be adopted for 8 years. You'll hear us use that language as we talk about some of the legislation that passed at General Conference that was readopted or reaffirmed into the Book of Resolutions. All right, so that's a very quick overview of what we're talking about when we say these 19 pieces of legislation. They passed General Conference dealing with creation, creation care, justice issues, things like that. And over the next several weeks, we're going to dig into these and help you understand what they're all about, how they can be applied in your church setting. And we want to have some time to sort of answer questions, help make sense of some of this, help you figure out what is unclear, what needs clarity, and the best that we can do that, we will offer it. If we're not quite sure, it means that we're still learning too on some of this application and the way it works. But you've got several folks here who are on the Creation Care Ministry team for the conference, and we want to help you with that as well. So I'm going to end the slideshow right now and see if we have any questions. Dawn, I haven't been able to look at the chat at the same time I've been presenting, but are there any questions that have come up that we want to look at first?
So far I don't see any in the chat. People, of course, are welcome to.
All right. So we've got a lot of people on here. I invite you to, if you can use the raise your hand feature down at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you should have a little heart that says react. If you click that, it'll have a little button that says raise hand. That'll pop your hand up on the screen at the top, and we can see who has a question or would like more clarification about legislation, about the creation care legislation, or where we're going over the next few weeks with these lunch and learn sessions. So who is interested in learning a little bit more about it? We've got a curious group here.
No, you've just done a fabulous job explaining it, Jonathan. So
Either that, or I've given you just enough that your head is spinning and you're wondering what is all this United Methodist polity and official books about. Yeah. I have a
there is
question.
wait, Jonathan, we do have some questions.
All
Um,
right.
There's one, is there anything on divestment from fossil fuels in the UMC's invests?
Yeah, great question. So here's the interesting part about the divestment from fossil fuels, which was called Fossil Free UMC, the big push that was done leading up to General Conference. It was literally the next thing on the agenda when General Conference ran out of time. And so what happened is it was that legislation about divesting from fossil fuels was sent back to a committee that was dealing with that to look at the legislation. There were several different pieces of that type of legislation that came forward, and they are working through those to see what we can do about them in the future. But it was literally the folks presenting it were ready to step up on stage, and we just ran out of time in Charlotte. So that's the most I can tell you about it, other than some annual conferences have passed some conference level resolutions around fossil fuel divestment. And so it's kind of bubbling up from that level across the United States, at least.
Great. And we have another question from Amy. Did you say the updated Book of Resolutions is not available from Cokesbury until 2025? Can we access it online now?
Great question. So if you go to Cokesbury, you can pre-order both the Book of Discipline and the Book of Resolutions, but they're not available yet because there's a revision or an editing process, a very heavy editing process that has gone through for both of those books. They should be ready in January, but you can pre-order it now, and as soon as it's in print, they'll send it out to you. I believe, and I should have checked on this, I believe there is a way where you can purchase both in print and an online version, so that the online version may even be available before the print version can be shipped.
And Brenda says, where do individuals get information for divestment in their personal investments?
Brenda, if you're talking about for clergy whose investments are through the Iron Methodist Church, Westpath, there is information on their website about adjusting your investments. But for laity who have um, an IRA or a 401k or something, you need to go to your investment company and find out what they offer and how they can tailor your investments in certain ways for that. Or you can look for investment companies whose entire portfolio filters out certain kinds of investments in fossil fuels.
Just
Oh,
here while
so
there's a pause and some are thinking of other questions they may have, I'll just let you all know the next 3 weeks what we have planned. Next week on the 11th, I will be leading and talking about 2 foundational creation care and justice resolutions, numbers 1033 and 1035. So if you want to go into the free version of the Book of Resolutions and look those up beforehand, they're long and we won't have the opportunity to go line by line or anything with them. You could feel free to do that. But you don't have to. We'll cover them generally. And then on the 18th, we have creation care leadership at all levels, denomination, conference, and local church, and kind of explain how that works and some resolutions related to that or some things in the Book of Discipline. Jonathan will be doing that again. And on the 25th, Jared Davis, who is our North Carolina Creation Ministries coordinator, so he covers both conferences in North Carolina, will be speaking on the new resolution on green team formation. And that is one that relates to the resolution we passed last year, 2023, at the annual conference, which was a local church creation care teams. They're very similar. They were actually, our resolution was based on this one, so it will be informational for that. And so I don't know if we have other questions or not. I just wanted to
Kim,
get
this
that
is
in
a
left.
I think this is a good time for a commercial on creation care teams in your local church. So if you are interested in forming a creation care team or improving and strengthening the one you have, Kim and I are actually going to be teaching a course on helping to create your local church green team, your creation care team, called Loving People and Planet in the Name of God. And that's going to be coming up in October. And Kim, maybe put a link in the email you send out for people to know about that course. It's open to anyone. It also qualifies for any of you who are certified lay speakers, lay ministers, as an advanced course. So you could utilize it for that as well. And then Kim, one of the comments in the chat I see here wants to know, how do we access this recording so it can be shared with other team members? And so I know we talked about it, but I don't know if we set up a way to access it. Maybe we can get the link in the email that goes out to everyone who's registered for the series. Can we do that?
Right. I think that's what Dawn was planning to do. She'll make sure that we have that, and that will go out shortly.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. Wonderful. Well, we're actually 2 minutes early. This has worked out well. And Jonathan, did you have any final words that you wanted to offer before we release everyone? Let them.
I think what I would say as we're going through this legislation is for a lot of us who are involved in creation care and justice ministries, it can feel like we're alone and we're struggling uphill. Now we actually have, from the highest levels of United Methodism, statements and guidance and direction saying, here's how we as a people can make this happen in our local settings. And so you have a lot more support and encouragement behind you. It's not just one or two people in your local church saying to the church council or your leadership group, I want to do this. Now we can say, here's who we are as United Methodists. Let's figure out how to live this out. And so I think that's going to carry you forward quite a bit, and that's what we're doing this Lunch and Learn, is to help you feel confident and equipped and capable of doing creation care ministries there in your local church and communities.
That's great. And I do want to mention, we do have a number of other programs along with this course that Jonathan mentioned that Jared Davis will be leading in both September and October. We've sent some information out about that. But if you haven't received that information and want to know more, I put the Conference Creation Care Ministry email address in. It's creationcarewncc@gmail.com, and we'll get you set up with a link. So I think we're finished at this point in time. Thank you all very much. We hope that we'll see you again next week, and have a great day.